Välkomna hit till Waterfront Congress Center, den här presentationen av Africa Oil. Det är fantastiskt att se så många av er här. Jag tror att vi är lite över 400 personer här ikväll och jag hoppas att många av er redan är aktieägare och ni som inte är det funderar säkert på att bli det. Africa Oil har ju varit en fantastisk resa under det senaste halvåret här sedan vi hittade olja i den första brunnen vi borrade i Kenya, men det ska Keith Hill berätta mer om. Jag heter Robert Eriksson och jag arbetar med Investor Relations och mediekontakter och lite andra externa kontakter för flera bolag i Lundingruppen i Sverige. Jag vill också passa på när jag har så många samlade här och göra lite reklam för en träff som ett annat bolag inom Lundingruppen har nästa vecka, nämligen på onsdag den 19 september. Så kommer Lucara Diamond hit, ett väldigt spännande bolag, presenteras av vd William Lamb. Och det gör vi på Teaterskeppet på Skeppsbron. Och inbjudan sker på samma sätt som idag till Katarina Vorontsov och telefonnummer och så. Så ni kan använda samma detaljer som ni använder på den här gången. Och det är 18:30 och det är en timmes presentation och det är smörgås efteråt. Så att det är ett väldigt liknande koncept. Så kom gärna dit, anmäl er, kom dit och lyssna på presentationen av Lucara Diamond. Nu kör vi en presentation här och sen lite frågor. Finns det möjlighet för frågor efter det? Och sen så går vi ut där vi kom ifrån och äter smörgås och så finns det tillfälle att fortsätta frågorna och samtalen. Så med det vill jag än en gång tacka för att ni kom hit allihopa och lämna över till Africa Oils vd Keith Hill.
Well, it's gratifying to see the large audience we have here. I can tell you when we started this 6 years ago, it was hard to find 2 or 3 people that would be together on a street corner that would listen to me when I talked about dreams of oil in East Africa. So as you know, and you can tell from our share price and from the amount of interest here, we've made some good traction. I think we've got off to a good start. And I think I hope this is just the beginning of something quite unusual in this day and age, is finding a brand new basin filled with oil that we can start from scratch and explore. I think if we hit our next well, I think Robert has already talked to the people who own the National Football Stadium. I think that's going to be our venue for the next talk. Lucas Lundin told me I really need to only show this slide. He said I could stop the presentation at the end of this. And this is something that's quite unique in this day and age, to basically start a whole new basin. What we've done is take the blocks we have in the kind of the core area we've got in Kenya and Ethiopia, both the Tertiary Basin and the Cretaceous Basin, and superimpose them on the North Sea. So what you see is that our blocks basically would cover the entire North Sea with a little bit to spare. So it is a huge area. We've only drilled 3 exploration wells in this whole trend. 7 exploration wells in this trend, mostly legacy wells. We've only drilled 2 of those wells. In the North Sea, they've drilled 2,408 wells in the same area, and they found 60 billion barrels of oil. So you may have seen our latest resource report. It came out with some what seemed to be fairly ghastly large numbers, 23 billion barrels, which I think most people looked at first and thought maybe we were dreaming. But we have 100 undrilled prospects that we've identified here in our blocks. And I think while the dream is still not fraught with a lot of risk and a lot of hard work to do, it's a dream that's not completely insane anymore. So I think what our goal is now, we've drilled our nice discovery here in Gambia. This is the one we reported just before we came here last time. We're drilling another well just to the north here called Twiga South. That well is currently drilling, and results of that should be towards the end of October. And we're mobilizing. We should spud another well here with the second rig sometime in the next few weeks. And then the last well to be spud this year will be on Sabisa, which will be on the northern side of these margins. Really, over the next year and a half to 2 years, we're going to have at least three rigs and possibly more working full time. And I think this is going to be one of the most interesting times I've seen in my career. So again, those of you who have seen this before, I apologize. For those of you new, I think it's worth noting why we came here and what we saw that attracted us here 6 years ago, back when everybody thought East Africa didn't have any allure. What we saw was 3 countries, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia, that hadn't seen a well drilled in over 20 years. Somalia, most likely because of the political situation, but it was a little harder to understand why people hadn't explored in Kenya and Ethiopia, especially because just to the north, the east, the west, the south, and the southeast, there's multi-billion barrel oil fields being found in the same geology as what seems to extend into these countries. So the color code here is actually by age of the petroleum system. The purple is the oldest. You can see we've taken the liberty of taking Madagascar and moving it back where it was in the Jurassic, up against this coastline. But there's 24 billion barrels of oil here. Same system, and in fact, an oil field discovered that proved that trend here in Ethiopia, drilled in the 70s by a company called Tenneco. In northern Somalia, we see the same geology in Yemen that extends across the Gulf of Aden. 6 billion barrels of oil here. Again, a small discovery by Conoco in the late 80s. Sudan, which we're quite familiar with, Lundin Group was there for many years. This is the Cretaceous trend. It extends through Kenya, and we have 2 blocks here in what's called the Anza Graben. But the one that's really probably the most interesting to us, as we call it the golden trend, is actually the tertiary rift system, which is the same system that in Uganda they say 1.5 to 2 billion barrels of oil have been discovered or to be discovered. It's the same system. It's basically just another branch of the same rift when this part of Africa was trying to break off and head off into the Indian Ocean. The good news is we were the first guys here. We could pick the best blocks in all of the trends. We signed them up. We got a huge land position, 300,000 square kilometers, over 74 million acres of land. When the rest of industry started waking up, they realized that all of the good land was taken, so they had to come to us to come and explore. So right now, the major oil companies have realized they've really missed something. It's not just where we are, but offshore Mozambique and Tanzania, there's massive gas discoveries being made. So now all the majors are scrambling to try to gain a foothold. I've had calls from just about every super major on Earth asking how they can get involved. And my answer is always, come see me in 2 years after we've drilled this up and we know what we got. I would hate to do a deal now that when we're kind of on the verge of understanding whether this is a massively large basin or not. We did do a few deals. Adolf Lundin always loved to explore with other people's money. If you really want to take exploration risk to zero, let somebody else pay for it. So we've been doing that for the last couple of years with Tullow. Tullow's been basically paying our way. Unfortunately, that carry has now fallen off, and we have to start paying our own way in the Tullow blocks. We just brought another company, a good company, American company called Marathon Oil, who's come in and they've farmed into 3 blocks, two in Kenya and 1 in Ethiopia. So they will be paying our ways on those blocks, and they gave us $35 million cash that we can use to start paying, to help pay our way on the Tullow blocks where we're paying now. We've done a number of other littler deals, the Horn spin-out, Afrin, New Age, Red Emperor. It helps spread the risks in frontier blocks. We still have a couple of little deals that we're working on in Ethiopia and in Puntland, but we're pretty much there as far as our farm outs, and now we're really just into execution phase. And one hates to address this audience and quote Sarah Palin, the presidential candidate in the U.S. I think she only said one intelligent thing that I saw during the campaign, which was drill, baby, drill. That is basically where we are now. So we are, the next 2 years is basically all about drilling. And our goal is to drill up as many basins and as many prospects as we can to really get an idea how big this thing could be. It's possible it's just a small one basin thing there where we found, and we'll talk about that a little bit. The upside case, as I said, is quite dramatic. So we do have enough rigs. We've got 3 rigs under contract. One of those rigs is going to stay just in the string of pearls in the south. So I'll show you that in a minute. But Basically, we have 8 identical prospects that look just like Gamia, and it's just going to stay drilling those until we've either drilled them out or disproved that the concept works. We have another rig, an Egyptian rig, Saxon, which is going to come and drill our first Cretaceous test. The rig is already set up, it's rigged up completely and ready to spud. There was some equipment damage during the move, which is being repaired, but it should be next week or at latest the following week. We should spud that well. And then after we drill that, it'll probably come in to drill some shallow wells in block 10BB. The third rig we've got under contract is a Polish rig from OGEC, and it's going to actually come up into Ethiopia and drill in the South Omo block. This is the first well drilled in over 20 years in Ethiopia. So we're quite interested in the results of this, and I'll show you where it is on a map, but this would open up a whole new fairway if it's successful. Tullow has basically said they're going to mobilize at least on 1 more rig or 2 more rigs if we have success. So we could have, by first quarter next year, we actually could have 5 rigs working on the Tullow blocks and possibly 1 or 2 more rigs working on our blocks as well. So it will be a very news-intensive, pretty much every month, or at worst every other month, we will have a high-impact well that we're drilling that we'll announce the results of. So. Again, this is kind of the heart of our trend, which is the tertiary blocks and the 2 Cretaceous blocks. I think these are where the majority of our resources are and where the majority of our prospectivity is. Generally, we have between 20 and 30%, 20 and 50% on these blocks. We operate about half of them, some of them through our Horn subsidiary, and Tullow operates the other half. What we're focused on first now is those strings of pearls that I mentioned. So this is the southern string of pearls, which is in 10BB and going up into 10BA. And this is the northern string of pearls, which is in the South Omo block and the 10BA block of Kenya. So this is where the Sabisa well is going to be drilled. And to me, that's a very interesting well, because if we can prove oil here and here in the south, suddenly everything in between starts looking pretty attractive. So the green area, which you can see on here, is the area we think we've kind of proven that the hydrocarbon system is working. So you'll see only a relatively small portion of this area would I say we have de-risked. I think the rest of this, we need to drill wells to prove basically that the source rock kitchens are there and that the petroleum systems are working. So I consider these now much lower risk than the rest. But certainly by the end of next year, we will have drilled a well in this block, this block, this block, this block, possibly this block, and of course this one. So by the end of next year, we'll pretty well know how many of these basins are prospective. In our business, you spend almost as much time finding out where not to look for oil as you do looking for oil. So I would expect not all of these to work. I would guess that maybe a third or a half of them might work. But at least at that point, we'll be able to focus our resources on the sweet spots. If it is the dream scenario that the whole thing works, this is going to be one of the biggest basins discovered in recent memory. So to start with this string of pearls, we call it the string of pearls because it's actually 9 prospects that are identical right along this basin bounding fault. So for those of you who are budding geologists in the audience, these are 3-way dip closed prospects right up against the basin bounding fault. You see them on this line. This line runs right down them. This roll over here is the Gamia prospect that we've already made a discovery